we'll give it a go. Okay, that's been well. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming along to Grassroots training. If I can ask people just to be on mute while we're talking. If you've got any questions, then feel free to unmute and ask them as we go. Want it to be fairly relaxed, interactive. So if you want to ask any questions, please do. At the end, there would also be a question and answer session as well. So if there is anything that you haven't asked or hasn't been answered, then please feel free to ask at the end of the session as well. So what are we going to cover today? So we're going to have a look at the search facilities, how you can use it to research bloodlines, age of breeding decisions, and obviously when you're buying stock as well. Getting a little bit more information than you may or may not already know. How to complete the annual survey stroke census and a bit of best practice, and how you can use that to help with your flock management, birth notification of lambs, and then registering ewes and rams, what we need to do, how you get invoiced, how to birth notify Signet recorded sheep, and make sure that you don't do it twice. So I've got Ed Brandt here who's going to kindly just run through a few slides for any recording members, notifying sales of sheep, and top tips and common errors. And as I said, we'll end with a Q&A at the end. So now I'm just going to go onto the Hampshire Down website, and then I'll show you how to navigate Grassroots. Okay, can everybody see the Hampshire Down website? Yeah, that's all nod, so hopefully that is a yes. Section on the top of the menu there for Grassroots. So if you click on Grassroots, then that will take you to the main page. One thing I'll just try and show you just before we go too far is how to do the search. Now, I've cleared the cookies and the history on the laptop, but quite often when you use other applications, the search facilities doesn't work. So you need to clear the cookies and then do another search. So I'm just going to try it now and see if it does work. There you go. So basically I just put in the word run, and it comes up with anything with the word run in there. So it's quite useful when you're looking to search for members or search for animal names. So I'll put in a member name, we put MC in there, and you can find every member with the name MC. So quite often, if you come across somebody at a show or sale and you couldn't quite remember the full name, or you wanted to look up the details, then you can click on the part of the name in there, click on Kevin, and then that will bring up their name, address, telephone number, and the email address. So it's a good way to get in contact with people. Equally, if you want to, you just know their flock number, maybe you've seen it on a report or a show results. You can just put the member's reference in there, and then it will bring up the details. And you can also refine it to members in regions, part of the address. And if you're looking to buy animals, you can refine it by looking for members that are MV accredited, performance recorded, scrapey, or MB3 in Ireland. So there's quite a few ways that you can actually access information and get in contact with members. So I'll come back to that a little bit later on, and hopefully the cookies won't disrupt it. Thanks. So if we search there for Janet Hill, we then see that her flock member reference is A16. But what I'm now going to do is go in and do Janet's annual return or census. Janet's given me the details because she hasn't completed hers yet. I'm going to go in, and then we can just have a look at that. Maybe have a discussion about how that can be used to help manage your flock. When you log in, obviously you go via the Hampshire Down website, input your member number, then input your password, and then at the bottom you input your email address. If you change your email address and you type it in there, Janet will get a notification and then she can update it, and that's where your correspondence normally goes. If you do find that you've lost your password or you want to reset it, then you can email Janet, and then Janet can get that reset for you. So I've now gone into the main page of Manage Your Flock, and you see in red there it says the annual survey is now live and must be completed by all members before the 1st of January. So if we go in to select the survey tab, this will show you all of the animals that are alive in your flock currently. And then what it asks you to do is to go through them, and any that have been sold or are no longer with us, you can then tick the boxes to say that they're no longer in the flock. If all of the animals are alive, you can actually click that box there, and then that will tick them all alive, and then it's not, you don't have to go through and tick each individual one. If you do tick all alive, and there's only a few that you've sold, you can then untick them, and that's an easier way to do it. Now I use this at the end of the year. I go through my movement records and just check that every entry that I've done either off or on is reflected in the annual survey. So it's just quite useful check to make sure that this is up to date. Realistically, throughout the year, you may sell some and update it on Grassroots, but there may well be a lot of sheep that have either left the flock or you brought in that you haven't got round to adding into the flock. So it's a really useful way just to see what is in the flock at the moment, make sure that the records all align with your movement records. Then once you've done that, you can just click continue to complete the survey, and then an email will go through to Janet, and then those particular sheep will be taken out of your flock or added in. So what I'm now going to do is just log into my records, and then I'll show you some actual transactions. I didn't want to mess up Janet's records. So first of all, birth notification of lambs. So all lambs are required to be birth notified to the society. So if you see there on the first box, it's got the EID tag, which has got the start of my flock number. So what I'll now do is I'll put in the last 3 digits of the EID tag. And that's the EID tag of the lamb. 189 in there. So the date of birth for this one is the 5th of December. And it is a lamb. Then you get the option there to select whether it was natural service AI or artificial insemination. This one was actually via AI. And you put the AI date in there, the 15th of July. ET recipient, no. And then the service sire is already loaded in there, which is Troy or Salvea. So if you remember when you do your membership returns with Janet, there's a sheet there that asks you which rams you've used that particular year. So that is where it gets the data from. If you don't find that it's in there, then Janet can add it in, or you can use the search for sire option here. So pop that in there, and then search for a dam. So that should have all your sheep that's come forward from your annual return. annual census that we've just done. So click on that from number 27. And this one was actually a twin, so you put number born in there, 2. It then asks for the birth weights. So if we pull that on there, that's quite useful because on Grassroots you can go in and have a look at the birth weight. So maybe if you're looking to buy a ram, you may be interested in the birth weight, or buy a ewe, it may be of interest to you. You then click in the lambing ease. So you've got 1 to 6 there. So number 1, no assistance, slight assistance, rope or calving aids. Probably quite difficult if it's calving aid, I would have thought. Non-surgical vet assistance, cesarean or elective cesarean. So we'll put that one in as no assistance. If you want to put any management notes in there, then you can. And then registration type at the bottom, you get the option then to birth notify or birth notify and register. So at this stage, I'm just going to birth notify, and then I'll make the decision whether to register later on in the year when I've made my breeding decisions. But if you want to register them straight away, then you can. Then on the bottom left, there's a box there for repeat info. So as I said, this one is a twin, so I don't necessarily want to go in and re-enter all the information again. So I'll click on repeat info, and then at the bottom click on the add to list of applications. So that's now added it. If you look down the bottom, that lamb has been added in. Okay. And then it's retained all the same information for the same ewe. Sean Doyle's asking to annotate the shared content. Try that, see what happens. We'll go in then and put in the number of the second lamb, which is 190. Type in the number 190. Again, all the details are the same as the service. This one is a ewe lamb, so let's change that to female. And the birth weight is 4.45. Not on slight assistance because I don't remember the second one. And then, again, I don't want to repeat the information because it's only twins. So I'll then add that to the list of applications. So something's incorrect. Registration type. Down the bottom, I'm just going to birth notify and then add that to the list of applications. So you look down the bottom there, both of those lambs are registered. You can double check the details, the same date of birth, same sire, and it's got their UK tag details in there. So once you've entered all your lambs, you can do them in whichever batch numbers that you want to. So it doesn't have to be too big a job. When you're happy, bottom there, it just says you confirm the best of the knowledge information given is above and correct. And also I confirm the animals are without visible and known genetic defects and confirm to the breed standards. And I guess at the moment we're just birth notifying, so we're not registering. So you tick that box and then submit application to the Breed Society. So that then goes forward to Janet. If you make a mistake, then it's not a problem. Just contact Janet, and then she can amend it for you. Once you submit the birth notifications, after that, then you will get an invoice from the society, which Janet will usually email to you, and then just either pay it via BACS or via check. So once we've birth notified our ewe lambs and ram lambs, later on in the year, we may, once we've made our breeding decisions, we want to decide which ewe lambs you want to keep and register. So if you see the second menu there is registered previously birth notified ewe lambs. And down the bottom are 2 that I birth notified earlier on, and Janet's accepted them, so they've now fed into my system. So all you need to do is click the two buttons there, submit the registration to the Breed Society, and then Janet will then issue the registered certificates once you've paid the invoice. I think this is quite useful at the end of the year, once you've made your breeding decisions, to go in and look at the screen and make sure that you haven't got anything left, because essentially if the ewe lambs aren't good enough for breeding, then they should have been sold. If they are good enough for breeding, then they should be in the flock and registered. If there's any left on here, then it might be worth going out to have a look at them and see why you haven't either disposed of them or registered them. The cost of registration goes up in October, but we're trying to get it done before then. What I'll do now is just return back to manage. So we've registered some ewe lambs. What about ram lambs? So we don't register ram lambs on the Grassroots system. This is done via an email to Janet. So if you email Janet with either the pedigree registration number or the tag number and the name that you wish to call the ram, then Janet at registration update the name that you wish to call it, and then that will feed into the Grassroots register. And normally it's the buyer of the ram that will register on first use. Now move on to the third option there, which is how to notify deaths and slaughter. Now, ideally, you would probably do this throughout the year, but again, it's not essential, but at the end of the year, you have quite a big job to go through and move them out. So again, this is something that you can do looking at your movement records, just to make sure that everything that you've moved out or off the farm has actually come out of the system. So what I'm going to do is move a sheep out. So we'll select that ram there. If you see at the top there, you can put on there, you know, if they died, how, and any details about it for management information. So put that on there. And it can undo all of this, so it's not a problem. You can put then whether you've culled them or sold for meat. And then if you want to put some management information, you can. And then just go down the bottom and then submit that to the Breed Society. And then that will go through Janet, and then that will take it out of the system. If you sell something for pedigree breeding, then again, it's exactly the same. You'll go through and select. Let me show you that one in. And then down the bottom, there's the option then to put down who you've sold it to. So you can search for the new owner in here. What I'll do is I'll put Janet's details. Search for the member. That's Janet Hill. That then is pre-populated into the record down below. And then you submit that to the Breed Society, put the date in that it was sold. That will then go through to Janet, and then when the buyer contacts Janet to say that they've purchased that particular ram or ewe, Janet will know that it's happened because she'll have that notification through from you, and then she can transfer it on Grassroots and send out the pedigree certificate. Then in terms of commercial breeding, it's exactly the same process, apart from when you tick the box to transfer out of your flock. We're assuming they're not a member because it's going for commercial breeding. You click on the enter buyer details down below, and you can put on there full details, full address, postcode, telephone number, and then again that goes through to the society. So that could be used for marketing information in the future if we're looking to make contact with some of our commercial buyers. And also it's useful for you to go back and have a look in the future where you sent your rounds to if you haven't got the records. Be able to do that. And we'll go back to the manage your flock details. Are there any questions before I move on about any of the registration process? Birth notification?
Oh, yes. Can I ask a question, Adrian?
Yeah, please do, Lucy.
Where do we stand on data protection with giving the details of say we sold commercial rams to where do we
well, if you ask when you sell them, if you ask the person that you sell them to if they're happy for you to pass the details on to the society, then you're covered. If you don't want to put the details down, then you don't have to.
Yeah, no, it's just such a grey area with somebody to get funny with you. That's fine. Okay.
Yeah. So it's entirely up to you. I mean, you'll have them on your movement forms, so you can always back to those if you wish.
Well, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, it is useful. Okay, thank you.
Adrian, you said that you can have a list of rams you've used like for this breeding season. Where did you say you find that, please?
So basically what happens is Janet sends out renewal forms in December, which is for registration of your membership and of your flocks for the forthcoming year. Within that, there's a page that Janet asks you to list the rams that you've used the year, and then she will add them on to the Grassroots so that they come up in that pick box.
So that's not a facility that you can actually do as part of your flock return or anything on Grassroots?
No, you can see all the rams that you've got in your flock, but obviously if you've brought a ewe that's in lamb or you've used AI, then that ram obviously won't show in your ownership. So all you need to do is let the secretary know to add them in, and then you will be able to birth notify using that sire.
Lovely, thank you.
Or use the search facility. It should come up on the search facility.
Lovely, thanks.
No problem. Good questions. Anybody else got any other questions before I move on?
Adrian, I know I should probably know this, but what does the society do with the names of the commercial buyers then that you put in?
Yep, Janet's got those, so that can be used for making contact or marketing information if they consented to it. Any other questions? Okay. So another feature that I find very useful is using the pedigree information search facility. So quite often I will look for all the sheep in my flock. So you can select down here alive, dead, or other. So if you had a sheep many years ago and you just wondered, what happened to it, you can actually select owner. So this will then show me all the sheep that I've owned. And then you can then click on them to have a look and see, where they've gone, what's happened to them, have they been sold on to somebody else, how many lambs they've had. So that's all the ones that I've owned. I'll try not to move it too quick because it can make everyone a bit busy. And it's quite useful if you're in the field or you've got a buyer and you know your sheep numbers or your shearling ewes. I've just clicked now all sheep that are alive and it orders them in tag number. So if we wanted to look up the pedigree of a particular sheep, what you need to do is click on the number. Initially, it will show you the sire and the dam, the number born, the birth weights. That's a fairly recent addition, so that's why it's not showing in there. And then if you want to check out the progeny of that ram, of that ewe, or that ram, you can click on it. You see all the lambs that they've had. You can then go in to see an extended pedigree. So I find this really useful because obviously in a sales catalogue or on a pedigree certificate, you only get a certain amount of information. And with this, you can actually keep drilling down. So as you see, there's a lot of their ancestors there. I'm going to click on that ewe, and we'll then go back to 1994. So the great grandsire of that ewe was Moss Jason. And then again, if you want to have a look, see how many lambs that particular ewe had, you can have a look there. So you can see that that particular ewe, there are quite a few, and they've been sold to various people. Including that one there that was sold to me. But I think when you're buying sheep, it's quite useful to see how many lambs that a particular ewe has had, or perhaps their dam has had, whether they're a regular breeder, and also to have a look at the ram to see how many progeny they've had. So I'll click on my ram there, and then that will click all the progeny that have been born from that ram. Quite interesting. There's one particular ewe that I purchased many years ago, which was this ewe here from a breeder. So I checked out the pedigree online and followed it right the way through, and click on the right. That one. Exactly. And that goes back to Lord Moss Jason. It went right back to a ram, Chapwick Albury Valiant, which a lot of people may or may not have heard of, but he was champion at the Royal Show many years ago, and I can remember that ram, so I like the look of him. I bought some stock of him, by him in the late 80s, early 90s, and I was able to buy this particular ewe that went back to him. So you get a lot more information from this particular search facility than what you would get from a normal pedigree certificate. I think it's quite useful because it enables you to see how many lambs they've had, how regular the ewes are at breeding. You can see how many stock rams have been registered by that particular ram or ewe. So it gives you quite an insight into the pedigree. Show you another one, and then we got any questions about the actual pedigree search facility? No. And again, that's quite useful to use this if you're selling a ram or a ewe. You can take a screenshot of this and email it to a prospective buyer, and then they can have a look at the pedigree, or they can search it up on Grassroots themselves. Okay. Any questions about how to use the search facilities?
Can you actually print out pedigree certificates, Adrian?
You can elect, you can ask Janet to set you up to receive email pedigree certificates, and then you can print them off. You can also, if you're getting paper certificates, you can email Janet, and Janet will be able to email you a certificate. But it's not particularly easy to print from from Grassroots, but what you can do is copy and paste it into a Word document and then print.
All right, yeah, lovely, thanks.
All right.
Hi, Adrian.
Hello.
Hello. Can you check if you're buying a RAM, if it's related to any of your stock on the website?
Very, very good. Yeah. I mean, it would be good to put that in. I think the only way you can do it is to actually look back in the pedigrees.
Okay.
So if you go into the Grassroots search facility, put in the RAM, and then bring up the extended pedigree, and then you would then have to obviously check your sheet to see whether there is a match with any of your pedigrees.
Okay.
There is. I mean, Ed is going to do a little bit in a minute from Signet. I know they've got a tool that can look at inbreeding,
Okay.
but there isn't something on Grassroots that immediately picks it out.
Okay. No problem at all.
Good thought.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. A few reminders here on what you can and cannot do on Grassroots. So, as I said, stock RAM registrations aren't done on Grassroots. They need to be done via Janet, and a simple email with the RAM details and what you'd like to call it, and then Janet will register the stock RAM and then issue the pedigree certificates. A request from Janet, don't pay until you've been invoiced, because it makes it difficult to be able to reconcile, and ignore any of the references that come through in the shopping basket. Janet says sometimes the emails that come through do end up in people's spam or junk folders, so just keep an eye out in there in case. Birth notify everything, even males that go for killing. I think that's really important because, as I said, people can be looking at your stock when they're looking to buy them and looking at the lambing records of ewes and rams, or progeny that rams have produced. So you want to make sure that your lambing records are complete, because obviously if a ewe weren't to lamb for 2 or 3 years, then you might want to ask a few questions before purchasing them.
Adrian, with that, do you put in deadline?
Sorry, Ed?
Are you notifying dead lambs? Like if you had a pair of lambs dead? You can put on that they're stillborn, and put that in the notes. Would that be carried through onto the litter size?
Sorry, say it again.
Would that be carried through onto their litter size on their records?
Yeah, that would be, yes. Yeah. And again, that is important, isn't it? Obviously, because if you want to see if a ewe's had twins or triplets, then that's important. And obviously, if you're recording, it's even more important for the litter size. Another reminder: all females should be fully registered before transfer. So again, if you sell a ewe lamb, make sure that you register it. And again, if you're showing any females, again, they need to be registered before showing them to conform with Breed Society rules. Purchaser will then, once you've sold a sheep, they'll get the certificate, and then they'll contact Janet to say that it's this particular sheep. Janet will then tie that up with your notification through Grassroots that you've sold it to that particular person, and then she'll transfer it. Purchaser pays the transfer costs, and then you've got that particular sheep out your record, so it makes it easier when you get around to doing your annual return. Deaths and sales need to be done at the end of the year or start of the year when you do your annual survey, but it's a lot easier if you do keep up to date with them as you go throughout the year. But as I said, a great way to check it is by going through your movement records and just check that everything tallies up with what you have got on the farm. Another query that's asked quite a lot is, do we have a year letter for naming rams? No, we don't. You can name your rams as you see fit. And again, another query that we get asked quite a lot is what information goes on tags. So there's nothing compulsory, but it's obviously usual to include the flock number. But apart from the normal ministry regulations, we don't insist on anything particular going on to ear tags. So what I'm going to do now is I'll hand over to Ed Brandt just to run through the process for registering a birth notifying signet recorded lambs so that you don't end up having to do the work twice.
Can I share my screen? Have you got it on there, Adrian?
I'll share it on, yeah, I'll share yours now, yeah.
So I was going to give you a quick overview of, well, a really brief overview of recording. Most of this of birth notifying from Signet data, but watching this Adrian use Grassroots, there's lots of similarities between our database and Grassroots pedigree databases. So if you are interested in kind of learning a bit more about recording or how to use our database, I'd be happy to either do a bit of a demonstration at the end, or we could run another session if we've gone a little while. If you like breeders are interested in that, if you hadn't kind of didn't know what was available on Signet, say we can do that at the end, or again we can have a bit of a session on that. So I think Adrian mentioned the inbreeding calculator, something we do have. Degrees that automatically moves the animal Signet or flock onto that. Select the rams that you're interested in, get the rams that you attempted to buy before you went, check their inbreeding, and then you'd probably pick the one with the lowest inbreeding value, which you like the look of on the day type thing, as well as the figures. So,
can everybody hear Ed okay, or is it just me?
You're a bit crackly, Ed. I don't
want me to turn my camera off if that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might do. Sorry, Ed, you're a bit crackly.
Try again, Ed.
I'm just trying to turn it off.
Yeah, that's good now.
Is it gone?
Yeah, I think so. We can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry. So I was just going to say that obviously there's the two databases. They do very similar things, holding the animal information. So I'd be happy to run through on a different session, or even tonight. It depends how enthusiastic people are about hearing about Signet data. But we've got quite a few things, especially searching for animals. Databases about helping you find breeding animals in your own animals, and also our inbreeding calculator, which uses the animals' pedigrees to calculate their inbreeding values. So with that, if all you're using your flock are automatically loaded onto the database, and it's just a case of you selecting the rams. So if you went to sale, just rams.
You're breaking up again, I think, Ed. Your camera's back on. If you want to turn off the camera, then it might help.
I was trying to find it in a different place. I click on it.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So, how much of that did or didn't you get?
I think we got most of it.
Okay, yeah, great. So, we'll move quickly on to, not quickly on to, but we'll move on to the presentation, which is just about the process of getting your information from Signet data onto Grassroots, so you're not having to double enter data, because it's obviously space for errors. So, have you loaded the presentation up, Adrian?
Yeah, that's on there. Everyone should be able to see it. Can everybody see it?
No, we've still got the.
Not yet.
Okay.
I can make Ed the presenter if he wants to share his screen, if that's easier.
I've got it here, so it should be.
Aha.
There you go.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, so I'll give you a quick overview of performance recording. So with performance recording, we take into account the pedigree information, which Adrian talked you through entering that onto Grassroots, but we also take into account the performance information, so an 8-week weight for your lambs, a scan weight, an ultrasound scan and muscle depth, and then you can have the option to CT scan your best rams. So we combine these two bits of information. They feed into an evaluation which calculates just the genetic merit of your sheep. So this means that you can compare animals on different systems, on different farms, and also who've had slightly different kind of rearing. So singles versus twins, obviously, they're not going to be as big or have deep muscles potentially, but their genetic potential could be as good. So what we do is we display those in EBVs, which are in the traits that we measure, and in the units that we measure. So a weight would be in kilos, and a depth would be in millimeters. So that's an example of one of the sales cards that you can present at sales to help with marketing your animals, but you can also use it for selection. But for this presentation, we're just going to be looking at using the pedigree information. So kind of click on, please, Adrian, which is just that bit. Yeah, you can carry on. Yeah, go. Sorry. So it's all kind of making life easier for everybody, because where we have like an extra step in the chain, it's going to allow errors essentially, because we're all human. So there's 4 bits to entering lambing information onto Grassroots through Signet. The first bit is collecting your lambing information, which I'm pretty sure that if you finish lambing, then you've done that. The next step is uploading that onto the Signet database, which is signetdata.com. And there are 2 options for that. It's online or via a spreadsheet. And I'll just give you a quick overview of how you can enter that online. If you're kind of collecting your data using farm software, then you'd use the spreadsheet. And then also the next step is to download and check the information is correct. What you've entered onto that is what you'd expect to, and there's no errors. And once you're happy, you send that across to Janet, and then it gets uploaded to Grassroots, and that's your animal's birth notified. So next slide, please. So very similar to the process with Grassroots, first step is just to check all your animals on the database and in your flock. So if a ewe isn't in your flock, you won't be able to add information for it. So there are 2 ways to do this. There's if you're logged in and head to the census section, that will give you a list of all of the ewes in your flock. And as with Grassroots, it's a good idea to clear out the animals which are dead, or you've sold, because they're not going to be cluttering your reports up or your data entry up. Or you can just do a simple EBV search, select animals owned in your flock, and set the date range to the ewes that you'd expect to see there. And then it's also probably a good idea to check that the rams are on there as well. So once you're happy that all of the animals are in the right place, then it's time to start adding your data. So you log in and head to the data tab. First step, again, very similar to Grassroots, is set up sire list. This is up to you though, so you can enter any ram if the ram's on the database, it can be added to your sire list. So it allows for AI, ET work, or if you've shared a ram with someone perhaps. Then once you finish setting up your sire list, the next stage is to enter the actual lambing information, and this is split up into 2 parts. So there's the lambing event information, which is essentially the parentage of the lamb. So you select from the sire list, and then the list of ewes in your flock, the date of birth, so the number of lambs which are born, and then the number of lambs which are born alive as well, because obviously that's important for the kind of our record evaluation. Once you're happy with that, you click through onto the next screen and you enter the individual information for each lamb. So there's ID, birth weight, lambing age, and obviously sex, which I've missed off the presentation. So that's obviously very important. If you need any help on entering the information, we've created a video, so if you follow that link, presentation circulate afterwards, you can head to that and click on that, and it'll talk you through the process with a demonstration as well. And there's also some written instructions on our database too. Go to the next slide, please, Adrian. So our database is split into 3 sections really once you're logged in. There's the data section, which is about entering data, so lambing information, birth weights, and the census. There's reporting, which is about getting the information back off and interpreting your information. And there's the services, so that's where you find adding a sheep for sale, the inbreeding calculator, and kind of customization tools as well. Obviously, because we want to get the information off, we go to the reporting section, head over to the flock reports, and then Grassroots birth notification is pretty kind of say what you see with that one. So click on that. Next slide, please. Yeah, great. So the next step is then to select the lambs that you want to birth notify. And unless you've got a really extended lambing period and when kind of the lambs are going to be over the birth notification age, I would wait until you're at the end of lambing to do this. Otherwise, you kind of end up getting muddled up in terms of born after and born before. So if you just select the the age range that covers your whole lambing. Kind of, if you click on, please, Adrian. So yeah, those two boxes there. To cover your lambing, then that's the simplest way of doing it. Sex, obviously, as Adrian said before, we want to notify all the animals that are born in our flocks. And then with the status, just select the live ones only, because it will carry the litter size through from the lambing information that we've already entered. So double click, and then once you're happy with that, you run the report. So click, please, and then click again. So once you've run the report, it'll take you through to this table. So with any report you run on Signet, it will take you through and give you the options to how you can kind of access the report. So for this, we want to, so it's all the information, but not in a very accessible form. So we click on Excel. Next slide, please. And it will drag it through into Excel. So it will give you each lamb with its Signet internal ID, and you can actually search for animal. If you're sending someone to search for an animal, if you type in the Signet address and then and search for an animal, and then add that at the end, that will give you that will bring that individual animal's page up as well. So you have the flock book number, UK number, prefix, sex, date of birth, litter size, birth weight, and all the information for that animal. So come next slide, please. So once you've got that information into your Excel spreadsheet, there's kind of 3 more steps to go within that kind of sub steps. So it's really important to check that information against your original lambing documents. So it's the correct information, because it'll be going to the society, and it will also be used in our evaluation. So we need to have as kind of the most correct and precise data as possible for that. If there are any animals missing, then have a look. You can search those on the database, because they may have gone to there with the wrong date of birth or the wrong flock. And then if there's any corrections to make, let Signet know about them, and we'll update them for you, and then you can kind of just double check that again. Once you're happy that the report is correct and the information on Signet is correct, then it's time to save the file. So if you save as on your Excel file, save it in a place that you can find it kind of quite readily, because you're going to need to add it to an email in a minute. When you save the file as well, try and save it as your flock name and the year. So for this, my flock example would be Norman being 21. Because it just makes Janet's life easier when she's adding it to the database. Once you've saved it, it's simply a case of adding that file to an Excel document and emailing it across to the society. Go to the next slide, please. And again, we have online instructions about using that report and a lot of other reports. So if you want a kind of a guided tour through and with a bit more of a demonstration, then you can head to that webinar and video or section on our homepage. Or you can also just follow that link. That's the kind of how we can get our information from Signet data to Grassroots without having to double enter it.
Thank you, Ed. Anybody got any questions for Ed? I mean, I think it's worth saying, I hope you don't mind, Ed, that anybody can actually go in and have a look around the data on the Signet website. There's quite a lot there that you can find quite interesting. Would you agree?
Yeah, so like I'm happy to kind of run a session even for non-recording breeders on that. But the sheep search, we've got several sheep searches. So we've got a sheep for sale page. We've got that's where you can go to find your performance scored animals. We've also got the flock finder, which will show you the nearest recorded flock, and a EBV search, which essentially filters out. So you can either filter across the whole breed, filter across a particular breeder, particular age ranges on that. So it's essentially just select the criteria that interest you and use that one. Similar to Grassroots, we've got a sheep search, which you enter the ID in, and it will allow you to search for that. Even as a recorder. And then we've also got a breeder search. So if you've got someone's name that you want to have a kind of look at, then you can go and have a look at their animals or that individual animal. So there's lots of information you can access on there, even if you're not a recorder. And every animal has their own individual page, very similar to Grassroots, an interactive pedigree. So you can click on the pedigree, and it will show you. You can kind of wander through their pedigree, looking back in time. And also you can click on the breeder. It's very kind of interactive.
That's great. Thank you, Ed. So we've had some great questions as we've gone through the presentation. Has anybody else got any questions? Or I just close off with some of the contact details.
Can I just ask, Adrian, the EBVs from the Signet, does that then go to the Grassroots so you can see it on the Grassroots as well?
You can't see the EBVs in Grassroots, no.
Right.
So the EBVs will just be in the Signet system.
Just in the Signet section.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So anybody who's not recording, not
Yes.
familiar with the Signet system, they can go in and have a look at www.signetdata.com, and you
Right.
can go in and have a look at the EBVs. There's quite a lot of information there as well about breeding records, so it's open to anybody to look at.
Okay.
Anything else you want to say, Sam or Ed, on that?
I think just head over and have a look, because there's like you say, Adrian, there's lots of information there about breeding, and if we had we could turn this session into quite a long one if we went into it all. So, but no, just head over and kind of, you can't really do anything wrong on it, so have a look and have a bit of a play.
Yeah, it's good to have a play and have a search. There's lots of reports on there, and there's useful information as well, aren't there, that you've put together. So
Yeah, I used to do basic recording, but not full recording.
Yes.
So I used to do the Signet, when we had the Signet before the Grassroots. But yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, no problem. Any other questions from anybody? You can ask any questions. We'll try and answer. Another thing just to mention while you're all thinking of your questions, there is a mobile app that is coming out for Grassroots, and Janet has sent me the details, so I've had a look around it just on the demo. That will be launched for Hampshire Downs breeders fairly soon, and I think the idea of that is that you can then have the app on your phone. It's much easier. So, if you are out in the field and maybe trying to sell some sheep or look up some information, it will allow you much easier access. So watch this space on that. Okay, any other questions from anyone? No. Okay. So I think the key thing to say is that anybody that's got any questions on Grassroots, you're not alone. Please contact the society. I've put up details of Janet Hill, who's our membership and registration and account secretary. Please give Janet a call or an email. You've also got Gail's details there, our breed secretary, and then I've also put down Judith's and my contact details. So don't suffer in silence. Any queries or questions, then please let us know. We're all here to help. And if you've got a problem, I'm sure that we can overcome it.